because of time on Sunday, just didn't get into verses 12 to 27 of chapter 11 and Jephthah's conversation with the king of Ammon. And we didn't do that because it's a brilliant little passage, but it's just quite dense, and in order to see the big picture, we just had to leave that. So let me just get into this a little bit more, so that if you're interested, you can understand what's going on in this conversation that they have. Because Jephthah here is showing his real strength, his real knowledge of God and God's ways and what God has done for Israel, and he seems to be kind of an evangelist in a way towards the king of Ammon. So verse 12, Jephthah sent messages to the Ammonite king with the question, "What do you have against me that you've attacked my country?" We know from chapter 10 verse 11 that Gilead and the Israelites are being attacked by the Ammonites. So the king says, "Well, you stole my land," basically verse 13. "When Israel came out of Egypt, they took away my land from Arnon to the Jabbok, all the way to the Jordan, and give it back peaceably." So that's that bit of land just east of the Jordan, in the bit where the Israelites sort of came in to the land. We'll come to that in a second. Well, verse 14, Jephthah sent the messengers back, and this is what he said. He said, first of all, verses kind of 15 to 18, look, Israel didn't take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. Okay, that's not what happened. When they came out of Egypt, they went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and then on to Kadesh, so tracing their journey up towards the promised land. And on the way, they met the Edomite kingdom, and they sent messengers to the king of Edom. Look, please, can we come through your land? But the king of Edom said no. So they also approached Moab, and he said no. So they stayed at Kadesh. But then they travelled on, and they skirted round the lands of Edom and of Moab to the east of them. And then they camped at the side of the Arnon, not entering Moab, not entering I lost my place, not entering Edom. Then so the first answer is, look, they were really respectful of the boundaries of Edom and Moab. They were not just trashing every country that they came through. They sort of went along the highway along the side. Then verse 19, Israel did come and take some land, but this is how it went. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said, look, we want to pass through. So again, the same message, let us pass through. But Sihon didn't let them, and he mustered his troops and fought with Israel. So whereas the others had said, no, you can't come, this guy said, no, you can't come, and I'm going to come and attack you. So verse 21, then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated him. And Israel took over the land of the Amorites who lived in that country. So this was Amorite land that they took from the Arnon to the Jabbok, from the desert to the Jordan. Okay, so this disputed territory was actually belonged to the Amorites. Now, here's the conclusion. Verse 23, now since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? In other words, we took this land from the Amorites because God gave it to us. What right do you have to take it from us? And actually, earlier on, Jephthah has made the point that you, O king of the Ammonites, your kingdom includes some of the land that used to belong to Moab. So he's saying, look, we're not taking land from you or from the Moabites, because just as you think the Moabite land that you've taken is yours, so we think that the Amorite land that we've taken, because the Lord gave it to us, is ours. We acknowledge your rights to that ex-Moabite land, and we ask you to respect our rights to the Amorite land that God has given to us. So that's a kind of history point, and verse 24 says, look, will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Now, if you look back into Numbers 21, you'll see that actually it's a little bit more complicated than this, or there's a little bit of a nuance here, because the land that the Ammonites are living in now, it's confusing, isn't it? Amorites and Ammonites. The king of Ammon is sitting in land that had been taken by Sihon. But when Israel beat Sihon, they set free the Ammonites. Okay, so actually, in a sense, the Lord had given the king of Ammon even the land he did have It wasn't Chemosh, it was actually the Lord who gave him that. But anyway, he's basically saying, look, your God's given you your land, our God's given us our land, be happy with it. We'll come on to whether Jephthah is sort of compromising in terms of what he's saying about Chemosh. But he's basically here is a theological argument that God is the one who determines these things, and the king of Ammon isn't to be going against God, who's the one who's allocated the land that he's living in, and also the land that the Israelites are living in. And then there's an argument from precedence, from verse 25. Look, are you better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Look, Balak wanted to fight, but he didn't want to fight against us because we'd stolen Moabite land. He just because we were numerous, and he didn't want there to be a threat on his doorstep. Okay, so he didn't quarrel because of a land dispute. So are you better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? And then verse 26 is kind of an argument of silence, I guess. Look, 300 years this has been going on, and you've never said anything, so why are you suddenly raising a fuss now? Verse 27, then the conclusion, I've not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. Okay, in other words, look, you're going against the Lord. And I think verse 24 is a kind of a bit of an appeal to the king of Ammon. It's saying, look, in light of what's happened to Sihon and in light of what happened to Balak, look, don't go against the Lord because you're going to lose. But just as the Lord's given us land and established us and blessed us, so he can establish and bless you, because he's the only real God. Chemosh has never really given you anything. It's only the Lord who's given you anything. So don't oppose the Lord, and instead bless us. And Genesis 12 1-3 in the background here, that promise to Abraham that all those who bless Israel will be blessed. Come and take that kind of attitude, and you'll actually find the Lord blessing you. But of course we know verse 28, king of Ammon paid no attention to the message. He wanted to fight. But I hope you can see from a bit of the detail there just the grasp that Jephthah had on Israel's history, his God-centeredness, his desire to warn the king of Ammon not to go against the Lord, to justify the Lord's dealings and his goodness even to this king who doesn't acknowledge the Lord at all, that even his kingdom is one that comes to him through God's grace and mercy, and a call for him to not to be foolish, but to be peaceful and to make peace with the Lord and his people.